See, Cheryl Reeves has gone all in on Olivia Miles, and Courtney Williams and Cheryl Reeves are humiliating the Indiana Fever in the process of this, because you got Cheryl Reeves, who's won at the highest level, who didn't have too much ego and wasn't too rigid to try to force Olivia Miles into her system. She is catering her system to what Olivia Miles does well. She's building it around Olivia Miles' strengths. She said that herself.
The most uncomfortable truth surrounding Caitlin Clark, Stephanie White, and Kelsey Mitchell isn't about talent. It isn't about statistics. It isn't even about wins and losses. It's about commitment. Across the WNBA, franchises are making decisions every single day about who their future belongs to. Some organizations identify a young star and immediately restructure everything around that player. Others hesitate. Others attempt compromise. Others try balancing old hierarchies with new realities. And according to this growing criticism, that's exactly where the tension surrounding Caitlin Clark, Stephanie White, and Kelsey Mitchell has exploded. What makes this situation so dramatic is that another organization appears to be providing a direct comparison. Cheryl Reeve and Courtney Williams have become the example being used to highlight everything critics believe Indiana has failed to do with Caitlin Clark. Olivia Miles arrives as a young guard with enormous expectations. Instead of forcing Olivia Miles to adapt to veteran preferences, Cheryl Reeve publicly embraces Olivia Miles' strengths. Courtney Williams, an established veteran and former All-Star, openly discusses collective responsibility and team support. Meanwhile, every conversation surrounding Caitlin Clark seems to generate another debate. Should the offense belong to Caitlin Clark? Should Kelsey Mitchell sacrifice touches? Should Stephanie White redesign the system? Should veterans adjust to Caitlin Clark, or should Caitlin Clark adjust to them? Those questions continue following the Indiana Fever everywhere. Because when a franchise drafts a transformational talent like Caitlin Clark, every decision becomes magnified. Every rotation becomes controversial. Every possession becomes evidence. And now Cheryl Reeve and Courtney Williams are being held up as the example of what critics believe Indiana should have done from the very beginning. The result is a growing narrative that Stephanie White and Kelsey Mitchell are fighting a battle that other franchises already solved. The first major conflict centers around Kelsey Mitchell and the role veterans play when a franchise enters a new era.
She's on a max deal as well. She had no problem taking a back seat, saying, "Hey, Olivia Miles, you do your thing and I'll figure out how I can fit in with what you do." We couldn't get that out of Kelsey Mitchell. It gotta be about Kelsey when it comes to the Fever. Why can't we get that from Kelsey for Caitlin? Courtney Williams can go all in on Olivia Miles. Kelsey Mitchell.
The criticism here is straightforward. Courtney Williams entered a situation featuring a highly touted young guard and immediately embraced adaptation. Courtney Williams, despite her accomplishments, accepted that Olivia Miles represented a major part of the future. Critics argue that Kelsey Mitchell has not received the same perception. For years, Kelsey Mitchell was one of the primary offensive engines of the Indiana Fever. Kelsey Mitchell carried scoring responsibilities through difficult seasons. Kelsey Mitchell developed into an elite shot creator while the franchise struggled for relevance. Then Caitlin Clark arrived, and suddenly the entire structure changed. The ball moved differently. The pace changed. The expectations skyrocketed. National television arrived. Attendance exploded. Every possession became part of the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. For veterans, that transition is never simple. History shows that whenever generational talents arrive, existing stars must make sacrifices. The adjustment happened when young superstars entered the NBA. The adjustment happened throughout WNBA history. The adjustment happens whenever a franchise discovers a player capable of reshaping its identity. The argument being made here is that Courtney Williams embraced that transition more quickly than Kelsey Mitchell. Whether that criticism is fair or not, the perception matters, because perception shapes narratives, and narratives shape pressure. Now every offensive possession involving Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell gets analyzed through that lens. Every shot distribution chart becomes evidence. Every late-game decision becomes another chapter in the debate. The larger issue isn't whether Kelsey Mitchell is talented. Nobody questions that. The larger issue is whether Indiana has fully committed to making Caitlin Clark the unquestioned center of everything they do. That question remains unanswered. And as long as it remains unanswered, comparisons to Courtney Williams will continue. The second layer of this story moves beyond players and directly toward coaching philosophy. Because Cheryl Reeve's comments reveal something deeper than praise. They reveal belief.
Yeah.
She's obviously showing us every day.
Yeah, and what I said on draft night was that there were 2 players that had generational skills. I would now classify her as a generational talent.
Fair. Fair.
And so I think, I'm sorry, your question was,
Just
how do you
in the
know?
scouting process, I mean,
I mean, it's really easy to identify, great passing, because there's not a lot of players that are great at it, and so instinctually so.
When Cheryl Reeve discusses Olivia Miles, she doesn't sound uncertain. She doesn't sound cautious. She sounds convinced. She identifies special traits. She identifies unique skills. Most importantly, Cheryl Reeve appears willing to build around those strengths rather than force conformity. That distinction is enormous. Throughout sports history, great coaches have often recognized that elite talents require different treatment. Phil Jackson adapted to Michael Jordan. Steve Kerr adapted to Stephen Curry. Great organizations identify rare abilities and then redesign systems to maximize them. The criticism directed at Stephanie White is rooted in the belief that Caitlin Clark deserves that same level of organizational commitment because Caitlin Clark isn't merely another guard. Caitlin Clark alters spacing. Caitlin Clark alters defensive schemes. Caitlin Clark changes television ratings. Caitlin Clark changes attendance numbers. Caitlin Clark changes the economic value of a franchise. When a player creates that level of impact, critics argue the system should revolve around maximizing those gifts. Instead, debate continues over touches, roles, hierarchy, and offensive balance. That uncertainty creates frustration among supporters who believe the answer should already be obvious. The comparison to Cheryl Reeve becomes particularly powerful because Cheryl Reeve already possesses championship credibility. When a championship coach publicly embraces a young star, observers naturally ask why the same confidence appears less visible elsewhere. Fair or unfair, Stephanie White now operates under that microscope. Every lineup decision involving Caitlin Clark gets examined. Every offensive adjustment becomes evidence. Every game becomes another referendum on whether Indiana truly understands what it possesses. And that's why this conversation continues gaining momentum.
This is what we wanted for Caitlin Clark, but we got stuff like this getting said.
We're not trying to appease the masses. We're trying to win ball games. And so I think for us, figuring it out on a consistent basis. Our big 3 are learning to play together again. With Caitlin missing as much time as she did a year ago, and finding a flow does take time. Especially when Kelsey and Aaliyah had the ball in their hands so much a year ago. And then
when Stephanie White discussed figuring things out, many heard patience. Critics heard excuses. That difference in interpretation is what fuels this controversy. Supporters of Caitlin Clark believe the adjustment period should already be over. They believe Caitlin Clark has demonstrated enough value to justify complete organizational alignment. If that alignment doesn't occur, the consequences could be massive. Team chemistry becomes strained, fan frustration grows louder, media scrutiny intensifies, every loss becomes symbolic, every victory becomes temporary relief. Meanwhile, Cheryl Reeve and Courtney Williams are being portrayed as the opposite model, a coach fully invested, a veteran fully supportive, a system built around emerging talent. Whether that portrayal is entirely accurate is almost secondary at this point. The perception has already taken hold, and perception can become reality inside professional sports. The Indiana Fever are not merely trying to win basketball games. The Indiana Fever are trying to manage one of the biggest stars the sport has ever produced. That responsibility carries enormous pressure. If Stephanie White successfully unlocks Caitlin Clark while maintaining harmony with Kelsey Mitchell, the franchise could become a perennial championship contender. If those pieces never fully align, every future setback will reopen this exact debate. That's what makes this story so significant. It's not just about Cheryl Reeve. It's not just about Courtney Williams. It's not just about Kelsey Mitchell. It's about whether the Indiana Fever fully embrace the Caitlin Clark era before the opportunity becomes impossible to ignore.